Hi everyone and welcome back, and in this video we are going to talk about how the code review should be done for senior developers. Let's say you are a senior developer in your team and you might be doing some code reviews. So what are the points which you should look for before reviewing the code? So I'm going to highlight some of them. First of all, the code should work, all the test cases should be passing. The project status should be included based on what feature you have added and is that feature really working. Code is written with following all the standard and guidelines you have put in place for React, Svelte, or maybe for component based approach. Code is in sync with the whatever the pattern and technology you have specified. It should not be duplicate code. The types and whatever should be specified properly if it is a TypeScript. All the function classes components should be small. Event listeners should be removed to avoid any memory leaks. Naming conventions should be followed. Either you use a sneak case, camel case. It should be standard everywhere, even for the table name, collection names, class names, variable names, function names. Unused package should not be there, and separation of concern and all. Then code style, which is mostly managed done by the ESLint we have. All the ES6 features are there, right? Obviously, you won't be writing callbacks if there is a promise and async await. You should be focusing on that. You would be using destructuring if you wanted to extract any particular property from the object. You can use the default values instead of initializing the values inside a function. You would be using arrow function instead of assigning this to that. This we were doing earlier, or doing a dot byte. So you can use arrow function. Doing a proper import export, importing and exporting only the required things. So all those things are really required when you're doing the code review. Apart from that, so what is the other important aspects when you are doing code review is the code statements, because your code review will be a good code review if you are giving a feedback to your junior developer or the colleague in the team while doing a peer review is the code comments, because sometimes there is a PRMRs are very big and you might be writing some language which is really not colleague friendly, right? So I will just talk about some sample examples like how you should do it and how you should not do it. Let's say here I'm doing something which is not right. So the code looks correct to me. Here I'm doing some kind of creating a Swagger documentation for my APIs. But here you can see I'm trying to hard code the username hello and the password hello, right? So what kind of comment I can write? So these comments, whatever you're writing, should be proper. It should not be like offending that person who has already written this code. Make it feel it differently. So I will talk about some example. So let's say I'm just talking random examples which are not related to this code. Instead of calling this, what do you think if you add this syntax, if this line something like this? It gives a really a good impression that you are a senior developer and you are giving some suggestion to the junior developer, right? And similarly, other liners like instead of doing this, saying something like you did not close the socket connection here. I mean, here you are actually targeting and pinpointing someone who has written this code, and you may not be sure that if it is a code written by that person. Okay, so instead of doing this code does not close a socket connection. This feels more peer friendly instead of putting something like, okay, you did not close the socket connections and it's not good, right? Similarly, example, instead of saying something like this, okay, this code is too hard to maintain, you can just make it as something like it's hard for me to understand the code. I'm just giving you one liners because these will improve your code reviewing practice. Okay, it's hard for me to understand the code. It's only the English verbs or English language we are putting here, and that will make your review better. I mean, obviously the person who has written the code needs to fix it, but the message you are giving is really clear. So I mean, you should not put no sarcasm, no condemning word or something like this. If you saw something like this, I'm just putting these simple liners. Okay, why don't you just write a CSS in separate file? So here, instead of this, you could have said the same statement in just on the same language, but something like this: you should have written the css file in separate file. This feels far more better than whatever you are saying here, right? You can use emojis also in your code to make it more friendly, right? And you can also put more explanation about your comment which you have just added. So something like this here, let's say I'm adding some comment like this: this code does not add a socket connection. So if we are writing something for a junior developer, you can add an explanation also, that which cause a leak to the file descriptor because socket is bound to the address. No other address will be able to bind to the same address once it is occupied, right? So another examples like you can use a please use the close method to close the connections. These are really helpful when somebody is reading it. And somebody, let's say if somebody is putting a wrong variable names and not following the standard, then you can do something like this: I think it would help me to have more expressive variable names that gives a real feeling, real variable names, instead of just putting any random variable names. So these were just some examples which you can follow to make your review better. So here, instead of this, I think now you can just put something like this for these variables. I think it would I think we can follow the standard here. These variables in the env same as others and can be picked up from runtime configuration. I mean, that's for a junior developer, but we already know that this can be managed in environment variable instead of hard coding it like this. Okay, other than that, let me find, these are all the consts. So all the constants should be put in one file. Okay, I'm just trying to find, okay, these are the DTOs. Okay, so these, I mean, these are the verbose messages which we put for the debugging, right? Eats restaurant. So we need to make sure that this is matching with the verbose message you put for the debug statement. I'm just looking for any other. Okay, we are putting the validation pipes. Everything is correct. Authorization header is there. So here you need to check that, okay, the API is responding the proper types in the response or not. Is it returning a proper status code 201? It is consuming the form data, so that is correct. Instead of, so you can also add a logger here that it's better if we can log these errors at the API level. So this can be the comment here. Now let's try to see what view do we have here. So here you can see that this is something we are doing a 2-line statement, but it can be done in a 1 line. We can return this directly from here, right? This can be another statement same as here. Until unless you are actually trying to log something, you can do it. Otherwise you can just use a 1-liner. Okay, it's like a very big PR. I'm just trying to put give some idea. Okay, here size 0, it's hard coded, right? That's not correct because I already know this code, so I'm just reading it a little fast. But here you can actually put a particular types, return response, here Prisma service, S3 module. I will just try to talk about some more examples if I have. This is where we are bootstrapping the module, some test cases, some files. So these are just an example of how the code review should happen. We should be following the proper variable names. I can talk about some of the variable names here, which let's say this is the function name. Function name should start with the lower characters, and then you follow the camel casings, right? Parse config, parse db config, because it is doing a database parsing. It is parsing config from environment. This is the master function here. And other than that, like bootstrap function name, if I put random function name async function init or initialize and bootstrap, these are relevant. But if you try to add some function which doesn't looks like initializing the application, then it feels it doesn't look correct, right? Similarly, create document. Here this function can be create document, or you can say initialize the API spec doc or something like that you can add. I will try to show more examples here. So here console.log statement, we either if you use a proper logging statement, you don't need this, and try to add the proper typings here. If you can extract the request typing, it's a express request, and here you are doing a request dot cookies access token, that's fine. Here again we are hard coding the environment variables, right? So most of the cases you will always find, because these can be configured in the environment variable, the what is the queue name and what is the URL to which you are going to connect to your service. And what else? I'm just trying to find any more errors in my own code. These are DTOs. We won't find much in the DTOs. Here, what else we can do? Here total amount is 0. And then we are reassigning using for each and putting these. So these can be the standard constants or enum, like the payment status can be enum, order status can be enum. So we will be following the enum instead of putting these double quote string. So this can be initial, this can be the nice feedback. Okay, just have a proper enums placed, so we can have a proper status, not random string you can assign. And these proxy middleware, because in while deploying this application we will be using the actual dev and staging endpoint. So target can be decided based on the environment, not just hard-coded string. This works fine on the local, but what if I'm doing it on the dev and production? So based on the environment, we should be able to identify the target endpoint. So that's another feedback I can add. Okay, the comment can be like, okay, please have a target runtime. We can decide the target runtime based on the staging, based on the node env. If it is dev, place the dev endpoint, production endpoint, or configure it somewhere else. Okay, these are all, this is how the code review should be done.